Good morning. So I wanted to do more practice with the simplifying radicals because I know some of you guys were still kind of after yesterday. So I am using Jamboard today, and I'm going to be showing you some more problems going through. We are going to go through some more advanced ones today since you should be a little bit more familiar with them. And then you guys are going to complete some practice problems that you are going to do on the Jamboard as well. Because Jamboard, if you have a touch screen, you can actually write on it. If not, you can use the text box to write things in. But with the symbols, it's probably going to be easier. Just use your mouse to write on. So simplifying radicals. Here we go. So these are also radicals that you can simplify. But the ones on this page are ones that you should already know how to do, right? Because if you look, all of these radicals are perfect squares. So the square root of 36, we should know is 6. The square root of 121 is 11. The square root, the negative square root of 16. Well, the square root of 16 is 4, but since there's a negative sign in front, it is negative 4. The square root of 100 is 10. And the square root of 49 is 7. All right, so you guys have actually been simplifying radicals for longer than you think. The only difference is now we are doing ones that do not come out to be whole numbers. If you tried to just take the square root of some of the ones we're doing today, we'd get a decimal. But like we talked about yesterday, we are not going to do decimals. We don't want decimals. I want a simplified answer. So remember from yesterday, what you would do is you need to find a number that is divisible or is a multiple of your radicand, and it has to be a perfect square. So for example, 20. 2 and 10 totally go into, they are multiples of 20. However, are 2 or 10, are either of those perfect squares? No. So you cannot use them. So you need to find a number from that list we talked about yesterday, and you should have copied down in your notebook, a number that is a perfect square and can go into your radicand. So for 20, that magic number is 4. And then 4 goes into 20 5 times. And if you check, radical 4 times radical 5 would give you radical 20. So that is the hardest part, coming up with that number. Once you come up with that number, you are then going to take the square root of the number you know. You should all know the square root of 4, which is 2. Square root of 5, not a perfect square. It's going to be a decimal. And again, we don't want decimals, so we leave it square root of 5. So the simplified version of radical 20 is 2 radical 5. Let's try a bigger number. 200. Again, so many numbers go into 200. For example, 4 and 50, right? 4 goes in, and 4 is a perfect square. But again, another catch with this is it can't just be any perfect square. It has to be the largest perfect square. And there is a bigger number that goes in to 200. And did you guess it? 100, right? 100 is a perfect square because of 10 times 10. And 100 goes into 200 twice. So we're going to do radical 100 times radical 2. And then we simplify the perfect square. The square root of 100 is 10. And again, I do not want a decimal, so I'm leaving radical 2, radical 2. So our simplified answer is 10 radical 2. All right, let's keep going. Now, if you need help and you can't know, like 200, that might have been a bit obvious. 128 might not be as obvious. So what you can do, use your calculator, Start with the biggest. I know we're so used to kind of usually starting with the smaller numbers. Actually start with the biggest number that's below 128. All right, so think of our perfect squares, kind of think of them backwards. So how about 11 squared is 121? 121, obviously, though it's too close, it's not going to go into it. So now 10 times 10 is 100. Again, too close, there's no way 100 goes into 128. 9 times 9 is 81. 81 definitely can't go into 128 either. 8 times 8 is 64. 64 could be an option. So let's try that one. So just if you're not sure, check 128, divide it by 64. Again, you can use your handy dandy calculator. And if you tried it, you probably noticed it does work. Right? 164 goes into 128, or 64 goes into 128 twice. So 64 times 2 is 128. And again, you should know what the perfect square, the square root of 64 is. It is 8. So we leave that 8 radical 2. Since again, I don't want a decimal for my answer. All right, next one. Let's try radical 54. Again, I'm going to think of the biggest one I can think of that's still below 54. So the biggest one I can think of is 49, 7 times 7. But it's too close to 54. There's no way it goes into it. So how about 36? That's 6 times 6, right? I'm kind of just going backwards. But that, again, too close. If I times the best I could do is times that by 2, and that's going to be 72. So way above that. So then we go down to 5 times 5, 25. Not a multiple of 25. We should know that. 4 times 4, 16. We could try that. See if 54 divided by 16 gives us a number. If you try that in your calculator. It will not. It will give you a decimal, so it doesn't work out nice. So then we move on to 9. And 54 divided by 9 is a number you should know, right? We shouldn't need our calculator for that one. 54 divided by 9 is 6. So we can break this up into radical 9 times radical 6. And radical 9 is 3, or the square root of 9 is 3. And then we bring down the radical 6. And again, a really great idea is to always check your radicand. Remember, that's the number underneath the radical symbol. Does a perfect square still divide into it? So like 2, for example, the only one that divides into it should be 1, because when you divide by 1, nothing happens. So that's the only one that's acceptable. 6, the only one that's really below it is the 1 and the 4. 4 doesn't divide into it. So the only one that divides into 6 is 1. So you are good. You know you simplified it correctly. You simplified it low enough. Also, to check to see if you did it correctly, you can use your calculator. So I'm going to check. So I'm going to type in 3 radical 6. So if you type in 3, I don't know if you guys can see this. The radical symbol is above the x squared, up next to the 7. So if you hit second x squared, you see I now have a radical symbol on my calculator, and I can type in 6. Oop, and I'm going to get a decimal. 7.34846, blah, 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 blah. Right? Long decimal. Remember that. Now I'm going to type in radical 54, the original question. So again, second square root, and then 54. Hit enter. Oh, I'm not hitting enter. And look at that. It's the same long number, 77.34846. It's the same one. They should be the same because we are not changing the numbers. We are just simplifying. So just a little hint. All right, radical 5. There's only one number below radical 5, and that is 4, perfect square wise. And 4 does not divide into 5. That will happen sometimes. There are numbers that you cannot reduce. 5 is one of them. 7 is not divisible by any perfect squares. 10 is not divisible by any perfect square. 11, 13, 14. The higher you get, the more options you have, but especially with those lower numbers, there's going to be numbers you can't reduce. So that one is done. The simplified version of radical 5 is radical 5. All right, let's try a few more. All right, negative 150. This is kind of like the perfect square on that first slide that we did. If there's a negative in front, you just end up tacking it onto the answer. You don't really have to worry about it quite yet. So 150. Take a second. Try to come up with a perfect square that goes into 150. I'm going to pause the video, and then when you think you find their perfect square, unpause. All right, so we should have our number. What perfect square goes into 150? 25. So we have radical 25 times radical 6, because 25 times 6 gives me 150. I do want to bring down that negative sign that was in front because I don't want to forget about it. And then we take the square root of our perfect square. The square root of 25 is 5. I'm going to bring down the negative in front, and I'm going to bring down the square root of 6 after. And that is it. It's pretty simple. All right, 180. Again, take a second, see if you can come up with the number, the biggest perfect square that can go into 180. I want you to pause the video, and when you think you have it, unpause. The biggest perfect square that goes into 180 is 36, which goes in 5 times, sorry. So square root of 36 times the square root of 5. Square root of 36 is 6. And then you bring down your radical 5. All right, now, if there's a number in front, again, don't worry about the number for right now. Just worry about your square root. You're just going to keep bringing it down with you. So take a second, pause the video, figure out what number perfect square goes into 75. All right, the perfect square that goes into 75, again, is 25. This time it only goes in 3 times. And I'm going to bring down the 3 in front. It's called my coefficient when it goes, so we have a number in front of things. I'm going to take the square root of 25, which is 5. I'm going to bring down my radical 3. And I'm going to bring down the 3 as well. Now, the 3 does not make that 35. Okay, the 3 is actually being multiplied. Remember, when there's no symbol, that means multiplication. So now that I have a regular number in front, I can actually multiply those together. So 3 times 5 is actually 15, and then radical 3. And again, if you ever want to check, all you have to do is type in the 3 radical 75. Okay, you would get an answer. So what do I get? 25.98. We'll round that to, right? 25.98. And I'm going to type in my answer, 15 radical 3. Again, look at that. I get the same exact thing, 25.98. So it's an easy way to check to see if you're not sure if you did it right. Plug that in, check your answers. All right. A few more with numbers in front so you can kind of see how that works again. Again, though, don't worry about the number in front for right now. Just worry about the radicand. So what perfect square is the largest that goes into 24? 4 does, right? 4 and 6. So radical 4 times radical 6. And I just keep bringing down the 7 in front because I don't want to forget about it. And then you take the square root of your perfect square. Square root of 4 is 2. Bring down your radical 6, bring down your 7. And again, don't leave that as 72. Please make sure that you do multiply those two coefficients together. 7 times 2 is 14 radical 6. And then the last one, 2 radical 48, biggest perfect square that goes into 48 is 16. Right? Radical 16 times radical 3 would give you 48. Take the square root of your perfect square. Square root of 16 is 4. Bring down your radical 3. Bring down your 2. And again, please don't leave that as 24. That's really 2 times 4. 2 times 4 is 8 radical 3. All right, so hopefully a second day of this kind of cleared up some of our confusion from yesterday. Now, I have this shared on our Google Classroom page so that you guys can go in. So you have the examples if you need them. But if you guys click up top and you click next, I have 5 empty ones. You guys are going to use Jamboard, and you're all going to have your own copies. So if you write on it, nobody else should be able to see your writing. Only I'll be able to see your writing. You guys, I want to see all your work, and I don't want to see just an answer. I want to see. So for example, 320, I want you to fill in what is the perfect square that goes into it. How many times does that perfect square go into it? And then do your answer at the bottom. All right, I need to see all your work. I am not going to give you full credit. You'll only get half credit if I only have answers on this page. All right, please let me know if you have questions. I am on my computer all day. So shoot me an email or leave me a private message in the assignment. You can send me a little private message if you have any questions on anything. But if not, when you are done for the day, you are done for the weekend, and have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday.